Here comes part 2 of the most common questions I get as a teacher. And this one says, why can't you just teach the easy steps? Now I'm going to give you two stories of what's kind of formed me into why I teach kind of the way I teach. The first one was when I was in high school. My mom was a math educator. So you could say, oh yeah, I kind of had an advantage, with the math department, but math never really came always easy to me, and I really didn't like the subject through high school. But for some reason I decided I want to be a math teacher in high school, but I don't know anyways. So, I'd come back home and, my mom would always say, oh, let's look at your homework and, let's go through all that. And me, as being a high school student, I was into sports, I had all these other interests. It was not about math education or mathematics at all. And she always wanted to explain to me why we did something. And a lot of times I'd say, Mom, hey, I don't understand how to do this problem. She'd say, oh, well, let's take a look at this. And I'd be like, oh, here we go again. I don't care how to learn why we're doing this and why we're doing that. I'm like, just show me the steps. And then, of course, she'd get to it and say, oh, well, so I'm like, you could have just multiplied this and this and you get the answer. And she's like, well, yes, but you need to understand. I'm like, I don't care. And that really, really, really impacted me as a student because what happened is my not understanding of the information or not understanding why I was doing something carried on to my next math class and to my next math class. And it carried over to college when I had to go and take my entrance exams. And the same thing, I scored lower than I thought I would have. I'm like, oh, well, I've taken algebra. I got a good grade in that. I know what to do. But the lack of understanding showed up later in my life where I couldn't understand why I was doing things or I couldn't apply them when I was given in a different situation. Comes up to the next point. In the next story, I've worked, a lot of students. I teach, students, and they learn from other teachers, and then they come to me, and then from me, they go to other teachers. And it really, really is important for me to always kind of stress the why, the importance of what you're learning and why you're doing what you're doing inside the class or with any process. And, a lot of times students will come to me and, we'll be in like Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 or pre-calculus. And students are like, all right, well, you should have at least a understanding of fractions. You might not like the fractions, but you should at least understand them. And the most common thing I always get with students, and the most one of the most common mistakes. There's a lot of examples out here, but the one that I always get is we have to multiply fractions. And then all of a sudden, you always hear the one student in the background say, "Oh, you cross multiply." I'm like, "No, you don't cross multiply." Like, oh my, you don't have an understanding of proportions, rationality, or fractions, denominator. Okay. So it's that basic thing of a lot of times, and I've done it as a teacher too, that we default to, okay guys, this is just what you want to do. Just do this and then do it on your test and you're good. And I think so many students, I've graduated from that method before. I've even taught students sometimes that. I'm like, it's just been a long day. I don't have time to explain. Just do this, get the problem over, and then do that. And I think it's the honest opinion about it. We need to look at, is that really how we're educating every single one of our children? Are we just trying to tell them, do this, do that, and then you're going to get your answer? And what that does is just sets up students for a lack of understanding, where they might understand what to do for that test, they might be able to get it, but then sure enough, what happens with rote memorization? They forget it, and then they go to their next course, and guess what? They're not able to apply what they learned in their previous course. So even, like it or not, for my students, I always want to show you the why. I don't want to give you into the proofs and go back through a whole mathematical formula. And sometimes I feel that's appropriate, but a lot of times in the more, I just want to kind of explain why it is. Or sometimes maybe I'll show you a couple different ways so you can at least see them, at least understand them. Even though you might not fully comprehend exactly everything I'm doing, I don't want everything to be broken down and just do step, 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 step. Because as a teacher, then it kind of looks at me as just treating you like a factory worker. Do this, do this, do this, do this, and then get out of here, and then come back tomorrow, and we'll do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And there's no growth. There's nothing that's really adding onto one thing or to another. And that's, to me, what's most important with the education is that I want to see growth. I want to see you taking one principle, understanding it, and then saying, oh, I can apply this to this principle. And then I can apply this to over here and over there. And then, oh, look, this different study, this still applies with the mathematics. Because we all know mathematics is the best subject in the world, and everything is, spawned from the mathematical ideas. And I think it's important that you have that understanding, because we all know when you leave here, you're not going to remember all your mathematical practices, right? You're not always going to remember the formulas and so forth, and nor really should you. However, if you have an understanding of how we came up sometimes with them or why we did certain things, that's what's most important. And that's why I teach it. Thanks.